This is a Sandy Boy Productions podcast.
Welcome to the Urban Pharmacy Podcast, where we help women remove the overwhelm of living their most holistic life. This is the place to find evidence-based nutrition tactics, healthy lifestyle and wellness tips, abundance mindset, and easily implementable low-tox living strategies so you can rise up to your full potential and protect your family's health. I'm your host, Stacey Heine, certified holistic nutritionist and better living advocate. Now, let's get empowered with some simple swaps that make a big impact for optimal wellness.
All right, before we get into the show, I know that you know I am all about trying to reduce people's chemical toxin load, whether that's what they put into their body or onto their body. And every little bit counts. It's all about getting 1% better every single day. It doesn't have to be perfection. It's all about progress. And one of the easiest things that you can do is switch over your personal care. So currently, if you're using fragrance on a daily basis, or phthalates and parabens, or polyethylene glycols, or maybe this is overwhelming to you and you're like, what is she talking about? Find safer brands that are gonna help you live a healthy and long life, okay? And point blank, my favorite beauty brand is Beauty Counter. I wanna make sure that you know, just because you switch to safer beauty, it doesn't have to suck. You can actually find really high performing brands that actually care about you and the planet at the same time. And that's where Beauty Counter comes in. So I want to make sure that you know that you can get 20% off if you are brand new and haven't even dipped your toe into the clean beauty mission yet and the clean beauty movement. All you have to do is go to mybetterbeauty.com and enter Clean for All 20 at checkout to get 20% off your first order so that you can start living a more healthy and holistic life. And if you're already a current client and you don't get in on that deal, don't worry, because you can always be a member and get 10% back, free shipping, and then get that free sign-on gift when you join as a member. But if you really want to be that icing on the cake, if you really want to take this thing further and get the best discount and make money, just hit the join as an advocate button on mybetterbeauty.com. It is a simple process that's going to unlock an immediate website for people to shop from, your own link for people to look through all of their favorite products and stock up. It's going to get you immediate access to a 25% discount, and then it's also instantly going to give you an opportunity to earn 35% all the way through the end of this year, base pay commission. So you're going to be getting a really good bonus, 10% more than what we usually get paid as an advocate. So make sure that you just dip your toe into this movement. Start today, whether you join the business or whether you're making your first purchase. Every little bit counts, and make sure you also know that when you support Beauty Counter, you are supporting a healthy planet and keeping lots of plastic out of the landfill. We're doing everything that we can to be as sustainable as possible. And for me, that really brings me peace of mind. Welcome back to the Urban Pharmacy Podcast. Today's guest is Dr. Brandy, who is a medical doctor, author, speaker, and cancer coach who has been practicing medicine for over 40 years. He is the founder of Natural Insights into Cancer, which is a passion project for Dr. Brandy. Natural Insights into Cancer uses diet, exercise, targeted supplements, and other lifestyle changes to help you fight cancer. Health and nutrition have been a passion of Dr. Brandy since age 10. He is also the author of Beat Back Cancer Naturally, a book that includes 5 scientifically proven natural and plant-based ways to prevent, survive, and thrive with cancer. A quote that he really loves is, "Everyone knows diet and exercise are important, but this site has shown me the why behind it all and provided amazing resources." Jody Black from Dallas. In this episode, Dr. Brandy and I talk about how to not only beat cancer, but also how to prevent it, and lifestyle mechanisms that can be implemented for anybody who wants to live a life of wellness in a holistic way. I think you're really going to love his story and feel inspired after you walk away from listening to this episode. Be sure that you share this episode and tag Dr. Brandy and I if you do love it, so that we can share this message of a holistic wellness and healing far and wide. All right, here he is, Dr. Brandy. Dr. Dominic Brandy, welcome to the Urban Pharmacy Podcast. Very excited to have you here.
Hey, I'm super excited.
All right, so today we're going to be talking about your journey to wellness and how you help others, specifically who want to prevent and potentially treat cancer with lifestyle. And I want to start first off, though, with your history and what you do and what you've done in your life so far, and kind of your journey into what you're doing now. If you can just give us I know it could probably take a long time to go through all of it.
I can do that pretty quickly.
Synopsis of it. It would be amazing.
Right. Well, I had a plastic surgery practice for 42 years. We had had an anti-aging division for about 25 years. So I've always had an interest in health and nutrition. Actually, in my book, I write, ever since I was 10 years old, I was reading Prevention Magazine. My mother and I would share, all the information on that. So I've always had a deep appreciation of, health and nutrition. I've always had an interest in that. And really the cancer, educating part of my life really started 5 years ago. It was actually 5 years ago, today, which is kind of crazy, where I broke my collarbone just watching television with my wife. I was having pain there, and I spilled some water, and I lunged for it, and the bone cracked right in half, which was incredibly painful.
Oh my God.
We got an X-ray. Obviously, it was cracked in half. I got an MRI. They found that I had a tumor there. And they did a bunch of tests, and they found out I had a blood cancer, which they say is incurable, called multiple myeloma. But what's really interesting, and we were talking about this a little bit before, is one of the precepts in my book, Beat Bat Cancer Naturally, which I wrote about 3 years ago, is that I really strongly promote a whole food, plant-based diet. And I actually started eating that way 2 months before I broke my collarbone, which was kind of weird. My wife and I were on a cruise, and I was reading, when I go on vacation, I always read 1 or 2 health and nutrition books. And I came across Dr. Greger's book, How Not to Die, which is kind of an interesting title. So I started reading it. And for those of you that have never read that book, I mean, half of the book are scientific references. And the science was so compelling that I actually started eating a whole food, plant-based diet on this cruise. And so and one of the things I always stress to people when they say, hey, you started eating this way because you were diagnosed. I said, no, I started eating this way actually 2 months before I got diagnosed with cancer, because the science is really incredibly compelling. When you go through all of the different articles, all the different studies that have been done that show that, cultures and people that eat more of a plant-based diet actually have much lower all-cause mortality, decreased cancer rates, cardiovascular events, metabolic disease, etc.
Yep, they do. And that is why I'm so passionate about teaching people this lifestyle as well. It's not just beneficial for finding your ideal body weight, but it's to help you live a longer life. And if you, everybody needs that book, the How Not to Die book. Also, everybody needs the How Not to Die cookbook. It's a really great cookbook, and it helps you understand how to swap out your sugar and how to make better choices in terms of salt and all of the things. And Dr. Greger's book is actually, the cookbook specifically is one of the main things that I use in terms of resources for helping my clients understand how to make better food choices. So thank you for sharing your story. Now,
What did you do when you were told that you had an incurable cancer?
Well, the first thing is I freaked out. So, understandably,
Yes.
you know, I always tell people, you know, we all know we're going to die, but when it's right in front of your face, it's really quite an experience. You know, you really start evaluating your whole life and so forth. So you know, once I didn't really sleep probably for about a month, but once I kind of got, you know, all of that in my head, and one of the things I do recommend in my book for people that are diagnosed with cancer is to see a psychologist. A good friend of mine who actually had the same kind of cancer that I was diagnosed with told me to do that, and it was like one of the best things I could ever do. I visited her like 3 times, and she really helped me kind of work through the whole idea of, you know, having cancer, you know, dealing with death and so forth. So I do strongly recommend that to people that you know, that do have are diagnosed with cancer, because it is quite a scary thing. But you know, once I got diagnosed, I really went on a very intensive search of the scientific literature to find every possible herb that I could take, you know, evaluate, you know, what exercise would do, how sleep would affect the cancer, how intermittent fasting would have an effect. And that's really, you know, the 5 precepts basically that I put in my book are a whole food plant-based diet, targeted supplements. I mean, I personally take about 30 different supplements, and I have all of the references. I have over 500 scientific references in my book. And then getting adequate sleep. You know, the studies are very prevalent showing that, you know, people, for instance, that do night shift work, I mean, they have much higher cancer rates than people that, you know, just work a regular, you know, 8-hour day and sleep regular hours, getting at least 7 hours a night. And then obviously, I think most people know stress is a major cause of just about every type of malady. So I get into stress reduction, and exercise, I think, is really one of the most important things that people can do, not only for, you know, immune function, but, you know, when I talk about stress reduction and sleep, when you're exercising, you sleep better, and also it really acts like an antidepressant. I mean, it works tremendously for keeping down your stress. And then I'm a big proponent also of intermittent fasting. Actually, in my book, I wrote about there's a study that a lot of people quote. It was a breast cancer study where they had half the group do intermittent fasting for less than 13 hours, and then the other half did intermittent fasting longer than 13 hours. And the group that did the intermittent fasting longer than 13 hours actually had a 36% lower recurrence rate of the breast cancer. So that's another thing that I, you know, do strongly recommend, you know, cancer patients to do.
Wow. I want to break down these these concepts that you have in your book. I would like to break them down a little bit more and kind of just ask you questions along the way. But before that, I did not know that night shift workers have increased cancer risk. I definitely knew that they have more metabolic issues in terms of weight and that they have a shorter lifespan, but I did not know that they had increased cancer risk.
No, they definitely do. In fact, I have, I think I referenced 3 different studies that were done on night shift workers in my book. But they definitely have much higher cancer rates than people that sleep normally every evening, for example.
Wow. And then is intermittent fasting one of these concepts, or was that something that you just kind of added on?
Well, that's something I actually have. Actually have fasting in the exercise chapter, because because what they find is fasting and exercise, I mean, they really do a lot of the same things in your body. Like they increase, you know, autophagy, where, you know, your body like repairs a lot of the like disrupted proteins and so forth. And I personally have a hard time doing fasting. I mean, I love to eat. So
do I. It's like my favorite
thing. Like the idea of like not eating for 2 or 3 days, I don't know. I just can't handle it. But intermittent fasting, I do very well. Like I usually have my last meal at 8 o'clock. My wife and I actually, I don't know if you've ever done this, but we eat popcorn that you can actually put the kernels in a paper bag.
Yes.
And you put it in the microwave for like 2.5 minutes. And it's like, it doesn't have anything, we put a little extra virgin olive oil on it and a little bit of nutritional yeast, but it's like fantastic. I mean, it's healthy. And, so we usually do that while we eat television. I usually do that probably about 8 o'clock. And then I don't eat normally until like noon. Like today, I didn't eat until noon. So I take my supplements then. And one of the things I do strongly recommend, individuals to do before they take their supplements, you've probably read articles where nut eaters have much lower all-cause mortality. So before I take my supplements, I know this is going to sound weird, but I do like 2 almonds, 2 walnuts, 2 pecans, 2 hazelnuts, a little bit of sunflower seeds, pumpkin seeds, some peanuts, and a Brazil nut.
Yeah, got to get the selenium.
Yeah, and I do that not only for the nut intake, but one thing I strongly encourage people to do is intake some kind of fat before you take your supplements, because you will not absorb your fat soluble vitamins and minerals if you don't have any fat content. So that's something that I do pretty routinely before I do my supplements, and I usually do that about noon, and then I usually have it's kind of like a lunch, breakfast, brunch, whatever, around noontime.
Wow. Okay. So I want to talk about the popcorn and intermittent fasting a little bit more, but we'll probably touch a little bit on it in the exercise pillar, but we got to get on the five pillars. But first off, I used to make my popcorn that way, but a decade ago, I got rid of my microwave. So I have no microwave anymore. I have not had a microwave.
Okay.
But I got an air popper, and even though the outside components are plastic, and I'm like a big person on trying to reduce plastic, of course, and specifically, you don't want to be warming your food in plastic. Like that is not good. But the actual inside of the air popper is just made of stainless steel. So it's awesome. And you can pop it, like if you just plug it into your, thing. So if you don't have, there's 2 different ways to make oil-free popcorn. Dominic's way, which you put the popcorn kernels. What do you use? Like 2 tablespoons in a brown paper bag, or
it's like a cup. It's like a cup in it.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So I used to just make like really small amounts.
My wife's the one that makes it. So I think she uses a cup. I'm pretty sure it's a cup.
So yes.
It might be a quarter. I think it might be a quarter cup, actually, the more I think about it. I just posted it on my Instagram about 4 days ago. So my Instagram's at Cancer Veggie Doc. So
Cancer Veggie Doc. Yes.
If you want to get on there, I posted it. I think it was like 3 or 4 days ago, but it's a video on how to do it.
Oh, fabulous! That's a great healthy way to do it. You drizzle yours with a little bit of olive oil. That's healthy as well with the nutritional yeast. And then, but in this household, I don't just purposefully eat oil anymore. I tend to try to get it from like the foods. So what we do is I spray it with a little bit of like lemon juice, and I'll sprinkle it with.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah. I spray it with lemon juice, which I just keep a little spray bottle in my refrigerator. I've been doing this for a long time with my tortillas as well. I'll make my own homemade tortillas, or I'll get store-bought tortillas and I'll spray it with lemon juice or lime juice, and then put my like dried ground cumin on there, or sumac, which tastes salty, and then nutritional yeast or garlic. So I love that. We're talking popcorn today, but yeah, it's awesome. Sitting down on the couch.
I love popcorn and pasta. They're my 2 favorite things.
My husband and I, oh my Lord, we will just sit down and we will continue to eat the popcorn. Like we will just make batch after batch. It's just, it's really bad.
Yeah.
Your intermittent fasting is different than mine. I'm like, I really love to eat very, very early. And I like to cut it off super early, like 4:30, if I can not get super hungry at night.
Okay.
I love doing that because it helps me sleep. It helps my circadian rhythm.
Okay.
So
interesting.
That's the way that I roll. But okay, let's get into your 5 concepts in the book, which I know we've kind of covered some of them, but I'm really excited to talk about like the supplement one and the herbs. I know that you're into herbs too. So
right. One thing I do want to mention about the whole food plant-based diet, sometimes people think that's kind of like way out there, but just remember that the National Cancer Institute recommends 9 servings of fruits and vegetables for the prevention of cancer. And, that kind of brings everything down to like conventional wisdom. Why did they recommend that? they recommend that because the studies are overwhelming that when you eat more fruits and vegetables, you have much lower cancer rates. So I do want to convey that to the audience, because sometimes when you mention, whole food plant-based diet or a plant, I usually try to recommend more of a plant strong diet because it doesn't freak
Plant
people out as much.
Right.
Yeah. So, and then, the second pillar we were talking about were targeted supplements. And I will tell you, just kind of start, I am not really a proponent of doing like individual vitamins, like vitamin C, like individually, or, taking like a D-alpha tocopherol vitamin E, for example. So I primarily do herbs because foods have, as you probably well know, over 25,000 phytochemicals in them that really work synergistically. So when you take an herb, for example, all those phytochemicals are working together to give you this very strong synergistic effect. And also, one of the things, I don't know if, your audience is familiar with the idea of a free radical, but free radicals are formed in the trillions, every day by your mitochondria. And basically a free radical, if you remember from your high school chemistry class, a free radical is a molecule with an unpaired electron. So an antioxidant contributes an electron to the free radical to stop the free radical activity that damages cellular membranes, DNA, etc. But what people don't realize is when that antioxidant contributes that electron to the free radical, now it becomes a free radical. It just lost an electron. So when you eat an herb, for example, or you eat an apple, or you eat watermelon, whatever, all these phytochemicals are recycling their antioxidants. So, when you eat that food, when the one antioxidant, squelches a free radical, well, there's another antioxidant in that food that's replenishing the electron that the antioxidant just gave up to squelch the free radicals. So, whole foods or herbs are really the best way to supplement. Like I am not a proponent, as I said before, of just taking like a plain vitamin C supplement, because once again, when you take that vitamin C, it can actually become a free radical because it's contributing its electron. Now it doesn't really have anything with it to actually replenish the electron that it just gave up.
I learned I didn't learn like molecularly. There was no talk about electrons per se in my herbalism course. And I'm very new to all of this, but this is something that I'm going to continue to learn. Now, how do you know dosage when it comes to herbs?
I pretty much just go through what I've read like when I do my scientific research, what kind of dosage they used in different, cancer studies and so forth. So that's pretty much the way that I dose it. I take most of my supplements in capsule form.
Okay.
My teas that I do, I have like a 5 kind of a potion tea that I do every morning. That's hibiscus chamomile with lavender, green tea, red clover, and what's the other one? I'll think of the other one as we go along, but there's 5 of them that I do at the same time.
What's your favorite vitamin C or source, concentrated vitamin C source?
Well, camu, I put that in my smoothie. That has some of the highest vitamin C content of any herb on the face of the earth.
That's in my face lotion.
Oh, really?
It's also known as youthberry. Did you know that?
I had no clue.
Now you know.
Yeah, interesting.
You know me by now. I really like to lean in on natural medicine and herbal immune support, which is why my family and I love to use Organic Green Growers elderberry syrup. Elderberry is an immune modulating herb and one which can be rated super high on the ORAC value, which measures antioxidant capacity. The pre-made elderberry syrup and DIY elderberry syrup kits are blended with anti-inflammatory plants that upgrade the holistic elderberry experience. Visit greengrowers.farm/shop and use code HOLISTIC to enjoy a 20% discount and free shipping today. Thanks to Green Growers Farm for sponsoring this episode. Back to the show. Whole food plant-based. You said it's really not that far off. And like you said, you like to say plant-powered, plant predominant. The majority of our food that we're eating, you guys, is plants. Okay. Like let's get like 85%, 90% there. We're good, right? Like that's what we need to be focusing on.
Yeah. I mean, I just read one of Joel Furman's books. Yes. And he had an interesting graphic, and I actually posted it on my Instagram site, but he was primarily talking about cardiovascular disease, but he showed that to reverse atherosclerosis, if you keep your meat animal ingestion to anywhere from 0 to 5%, you can actually reverse atherosclerosis. And then, if you just kind of want to keep it stable, I think it was anywhere from 5 to 20%, somewhere in that level. But it's like with anything, and I really stress this to a lot of the cancer patients that I counsel. And by the way, I do virtual consultations for cancer patients. And then I have a special subscription on my website where they can have 24/7 access to me through email and text messages. Whenever they have a question about lab work or whatever, I can help them through that. But I'm looking up the teas here because that's really bugging me. Okay, here we go. Green tea, hibiscus. Oh, dandelion.
Dandelion. Is it dandelion?
That was the one that I forgot. I don't know how I forgot that one. But
dandelion greens or dandelion flowers?
It's leaf and root.
Ah, leaf and root.
It's a combination. It's through traditional medicinals. That's through the teas.
Oh, I love that tea. I love that that brand.
Yeah. The reason I actually started doing the dandelion is that, and one of the things I would strongly recommend your listeners to do is get on nutritionfacts.org. I don't know if you get on that website, but it's really one of the most amazing websites. They have, over 20 scientists that review every single article in the nutritional literature. Like last year, for example, they reviewed 190,000 plus articles.
Yeah.
And then they take all the science and then they put them into these like 5-7 minute videos, which you can watch, very quickly. And they basically make a video every day. I mean, I get emailed a video for free every day. And if you're trying to make a change in your lifestyle, you need to constantly be educated. I'm sure you're, familiar with that with your clients. If they're not educated, why are they going to eat like a piece of broccoli instead of like a piece of fried chicken?
Right.
So they really need to be educated. So when I used to have monthly meetings at my skin center, I always started with the nutritionalfacts.org video. I would have everybody in the audience actually get it on their phone, put the icon on their phone, and I would encourage them every day to at least once a week, watch or listen to one of those videos. So I do think that's really, super important.
It's been so helpful for me throughout my journey. Like, I just really appreciate how Dr. Greger breaks down the science and makes it super digestible. And it's funny that you were saying, like, understanding the benefits of broccoli. Like, that's why I started Holistic Mama Society. Like, what I do for my clients in a group setting, like, I have an herb or an ingredient of the month. And a few months ago, it was learning about cruciferous vegetables. And I broke down the importance of sulforaphane, and like, they were just like, whoa, that's so cool. And they were like mind blown. And I'm like, you guys, like, this is where it's at. Like, we have to learn these things so that we can understand how protective these foods are.
Talking about cruciferous vegetables is really interesting. There was a really good study where they exposed 34 different vegetable extracts to all these different types of cancers. And what was interesting, the shorter the bar meant that they had these different bars, in the study, and the shorter the bar, that meant that there was the most intense anti-cancer activity. But what's really interesting is that consistently the allium and the cruciferous vegetables. So allium would be your onion.
That was my topic just last month, I think. Allium.
Yeah, and then your cruciferous, they were always to the right. They always had the shortest bars. But what was really interesting is that every cancer reacted differently to these different vegetable extracts. Like if I just followed bok choy, for example, and I looked at like how it reacted to glioblastoma versus kidney cancer versus lung cancer, it had a different effect on each one of those. And that's one of the reasons I really strongly recommend, people to eat a variety of different vegetables. Like when you make a salad, instead of having, just lettuce, tomato, and some carrots, put lettuce, maybe put 2 little tomatoes, 2 pieces of broccoli, a few onions, put some radish, so put a lot of different vegetables in there, like a little bit of each. And you're going to get a more synergistic effect and a more cancer protective effect.
Wow. Just like you do with your nuts. I mean, that's like dedication.
Oh yeah. Well, that's the reason I do it that way. Yeah. And when I give lectures on, I have a lecture that I do on synergy, and that's one of the things, I mentioned in there. I could just take a whole handful of walnuts. It would do the same thing as far as the fat soluble, nutrients being absorbed. But, I want to take advantage of the synergy of all the different phytochemicals in each one of those nuts.
I love that. And just really fast before we get on to the last 3 pillars, speaking about like how you were saying how powerful the alliums and the cruciferous vegetables were, there still has not been a study on onion sprouts and the allicin content. And every time I sprout my own onions, like, I'll do broccoli sprouts, I'll do mung bean sprouts. Like I do sprouts a lot. I love growing sprouts. And there's been so many studies on the sulforaphane content and the cancer crushing compounds in broccoli sprouts, but they haven't done any studies on onion sprouts. And I even talked to Dr. Furman at one of the conferences that I was at. He has yet to even eat onion sprouts. And I'm like, what are you doing?
I didn't even know there were onion sprouts.
I got Dr. Will Bolsowitz on onion sprouts. In fact, he actually wrote about them in his book. Because of me, because I told him about how good they were. And now he teaches people how to do onion sprouts.
Interesting.
Like they're so delicious. And I can just imagine how strong the allicin is when I'm eating them. I'm like, these have to be really, really good compared to
now, are they pungent when you eat them?
They're so pungent, but they're so good. Like I can't even explain
because we eat like radish microgreens.
Yes. We grow and sell
pretty
those at the farmer's market. Yeah.
So we actually we do our own microgreens. Like we have a grow light.
Yeah, I love it.
We do a lot of different microgreens in our house. So
fun. Have you done amaranth yet?
No, we haven't.
Oh my God, they're beautiful. They're gorgeous.
Really?
The red amaranth.
Look into that. Okay.
Oh, I can only imagine how amazing they are for you. So
okay, I'm gonna have to look into that one.
I feel like we could kind of be foodie geeks over here for a good while for the whole episode. But let's talk about the last 3 pillars. I know there's exercise. So let's talk about that in terms of cancer.
Yeah, well, one of the things, there was a really interesting study that I, quote in my book, is that they actually showed that only 6 minutes of exercise will jack up your natural killer cell activity by 50%.
Wow.
And the reason I stress that to people is that, some individuals think you have to do this like hour workout. You have to drive to the gym, and do all these weights and everything. And one of the things I always stress to people is, try to do your exercise first thing in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
If you can, just do it in your house, because, you're going to have less distractions that are going to keep you from doing it.
Absolutely.
So I do every day, I do a resistant band routine. It takes me about 15 minutes. And then I try to bike every day. That's kind of the aerobic exercise that I do. But, some days I'm in a hurry, or I just don't feel like doing 15 minutes. I'll cut the bands in half. I'll do it in 7.5 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
So the thing that I really strongly recommend, to people about exercise is that you don't have to do this like big, long hour routine. Even if you do it for 10 minutes and you're consistent with it, you're going to get tremendous benefits from it.
Wow.
But not only, the immune boosting, effects, but I think we all know that, when you exercise, it has tremendous positive effect on your cardiovascular system. It actually will take some of your smaller LDL and make the particles bigger, which are less, damaging to the cardiovascular system. Yeah, yeah. In fact, I've recently finished Joel Kahn's book on heart disease, and it's a really interesting book. I think it's called The Heart Solution. I would definitely recommend people reading that.
He's amazing.
The thing that I mentioned also before, besides the cardiovascular effects and the fact that it does, stimulate your immune system, it makes you sleep a lot better. People that exercise, they have much better sleep habits. And then also, in my book, I get into a lot of the research on how exercise actually, in many studies, has a better effect than antidepressants. So instead of taking an antidepressant, if you're feeling blue, go out for, a bike ride or something, and you're going to, you're going to feel 100% better. You're going to look better. When you look in the mirror, you're going to have a better, sense of, like worth, and you're going to feel good about the way that you just like look. And I think that makes a big difference in just your whole mental attitude. But if you really get into the research, and I get into a lot of the studies in my book, really the immune stimulatory effects and the anti-cancer effects of exercise is really quite impressive. I mean, it's in fact, when you look at I think most people know that breast cancer patients that exercise have much, much lower recurrence rates. In fact, one study that I read was like super impressive. Women that ran 2.5 miles a day after breast cancer only had a 5% recurrence rate. I mean, It was incredible.
Wow.
On average, exercise in breast cancer patients will lower the recurrence rate by typically about 50%. But if you do it a little bit more vigorously, you can actually get that recurrence rate, a lot lower. So it definitely has a very, very positive effect. And then in the book, I get into how people that exercise, I get into the different cancers, how like endometrial cancer, like you have like a 10% less risk of getting cancer, prostate cancer. I think it's about 25% less risk. So exercise definitely has a positive effect, for the prevention of cancer. And then if you get it, not getting a relapse. And one of the things I always stress in my book, for people that have had cancer and get into a remission, I always tell them to ask themselves, if I could do it all over, what would I do differently? Would I eat more fruits and vegetables? Would I exercise more? Would I get to sleep earlier? And, and I really stress that, because you do get a second chance. So, if they use a lot of the precepts that I use, I really do think, that their chances of getting like a recurrence is going to be much, much less.
Wow. Fabulous. Positive news here. This is good stuff. Tell me about the last two pillars.
Well, I think they were, we talked about exercise. So like sleep, we talked a little bit about that, how night shift workers have, much higher cancer rates. And then there's a lot of different studies. If you go through the literature, people that like sleep like 5 hours or less, how the incidence of chronic disease goes up about 40%. I mean, it's pretty dramatic.
So what is the ideal number of hours?
I always tell people get anywhere from 7 to 9 hours of sleep, somewhere around there. Yes. I think 7, minimum 6 hours, but, I think 7 to 9 hours is really where you need to be. There's some people, they say, can sleep 4 hours a night. I don't know if I really buy into that. So, I mean, maybe the way their metabolism is, they can maybe function that way, but I'm not sure for their overall health that, in the long run, that's going to, have any kind of a positive effect on them. I don't know. But you always hear about people say they can get by with 4 hours of sleep a day, but a night. So I don't know if that's true or not, but I think they can function. But once again, I'm not sure how healthy they are. So
right. There's always those unicorns out there that
right
can get by with stuff like that.
Right. And really the last pillar that we were, talking about was stress reduction. people that are under chronic stress definitely have much higher cancer rates. The studies are prevalent throughout the scientific literature. And also, if you look through the literature, there have been studies, for instance, on breast cancer patients that, underwent like stress reduction techniques after their cancer. And the recurrence rates were much lower in the individuals. Like one study, they followed them for about 5 years, and the recurrence rate was much lower in the group where they had stress reduction teaching and stress reduction techniques were implemented. So I really do think being able to control your stress is a very important thing, and there's a lot of different ways you can do it. You've probably heard about mindfulness, for example, just trying to like get into the minute. Don't be thinking about the future too much. Just enjoy. If you're taking a walk, enjoy the sky, the clouds, the flowers. Just try to get into the moment.
Yes.
And there's other, you can read a book. I mean, there's a lot of different ways that you can really, meditate. I really think prayer is very important. I actually, in my book, I have 2 studies that were really interesting. They were on prayer, and it was interesting. There were 2 different groups, and one group was prayed for and the other group wasn't. The group that was prayed for had much better, results compared to the group that wasn't prayed for. It was kind of interesting.
Wow.
But I do think, things like prayer, meditation, I do think like they're really important for, stress reduction. I also, my son is someone that gets very anxious. So I'm always trying to teach him how to deep breathe, kind of breathe in, hold. The method I use, I kind of breathe in, hold it for 7 seconds, and then I breathe out over 7 seconds. So I do kind of a 7-7-7 kind of method, but that'll definitely slow down your heart rate. It'll kick in your parasympathetic nervous system and just give you a feeling of calmness when you do that. So there's a lot of different techniques that you can use, like to really keep your, stress levels down. I think one of the most important things, especially for people like me that are more type A, is not to do too many things, too many projects. Really just try to live life so that you're not, trying to overachieve too much, because I mean, that definitely causes, a lot of stress in your life.
Yeah, true. Wow. Oh my gosh. Okay. So all of these little things that you've mentioned that are in your book are fascinating. I got to learn more about that prayer piece. That's fascinating. And again, it's called Beat Back Cancer
Naturally. Right.
Love it.
And you get it on Amazon. I always tell people, if you want me to sign a copy for you, if you go to my website, which is naturalinsightsintocancer.com, you can order it there too. And then I do a signed copy, for you if you want that. And then also, if people are interested in having me as a speaker, I do speaking engagements also. If people are interested, they can contact me on my website.
Love it. Dr. Brandy, thank you so much for your time. I have one more question before we wrap this conversation up. And it's something that I ask every guest. What does holistic living mean to you?
Holistic living means trying to, live a lifestyle where your eating habits are more, eating more natural foods, unprocessed foods, like, produce, not seeds, beans, and so forth, like avoiding, like snacks, corn chips and potato chips and things like that. And then, doing a lot of the things that we were talking about, like, trying to practice stress reduction, getting a good night's sleep, studying different herbs and learning, how you can incorporate that into your life, incorporating teas into your life. So I think it's really kind of living more kind of in tune with nature and trying to get away from a lot of these synthetic, food products and, toxins that we're exposed to on a day in and day out basis.
I love it.
Is that your kind of idea?
Absolutely. Everybody has their own definition. So
okay.
But it typically is
like that. It's typically, kind of just living whole. I mean, everybody has their own definition, which is why I ask. And I love to get the insight on everybody's thought process behind that.
Yeah, appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. So is there anything else that you want to share before we close our conversation today?
Not really. I mean, one of the things I do want to stress, though, for cancer patients, when you get a cancer diagnosis, I absolutely do not tell individuals to not go through conventional treatment.
Mm-hmm.
Like my recommendations are a supplement that's kind of complementary to the conventional treatments. The only thing I really advise patients to do is, ask your doctor if he can give you the lowest possible dose
mm-hmm.
to try to keep the toxicity. And that's basically what I did with my cancer. I rejected a really potent type of medication that I would have to get injections every week into my abdomen. And the chances of getting peripheral neuropathy were almost 90%, which I didn't.
Wow.
I'm a surgeon. I didn't want to have to deal with that. So I rejected that and just went with 2 oral medications that at a very low dose. And I was able to get into a complete remission in 6 months. And,
wow.
The reason people that are eating a whole food plant-based diet and they're, taking supplements and so forth, the reason I tell them to do that is, that holistic approach is definitely going to help the conventional approach. And there's a good chance you're going to get a good result just keeping the conventional dosage down a little bit. The other thing is I recommend is they ask the doctor to give the cancer drugs metronomically, which means instead of giving a big dose every month, you give smaller doses on a more kind of a weekly or bi-weekly basis. And
I see.
And that keeps the toxicity down. It also keeps the angiogenesis down. So tumors, you probably know this, need blood supply to be able to metastasize.
Mm-hmm.
So when you give a big dose beginning of each month, you really give that cancer a chance to develop more blood vessels in the interim. If you give smaller doses, more frequently, you really kind of mitigate that angiogenesis effect. So that's something that I want to make sure I stress to people, that I am not recommending that people just eat a whole food plant-based diet if they get diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. It's going to help your treatment, but don't expect, food and herbs alone to be able to kill trillions of cancer cells that are, running rampant in your body. So.
Right. Wow. I know about angiogenesis thanks to, is it Dr. William Lee?
Oh yeah. He
speaks so much about angiogenesis.
Yeah. I talk a lot about that in my book. I think it's really
fabulous.
Super important. So
fabulous. Well, we'll definitely put the links to how to reach you, how to work with you, and where to buy your book in the show notes. And I appreciate your time. I feel like we could probably have another conversation just about food someday. So we'll have to see where that goes.
Okay, Stace. Okay. Sounds great. Great chatting with you.
I am so appreciative of you. And thank you so much for being here, Dr. Brandy.
Okay. Thanks, Stacey. I appreciate it.
I'm over here cheering you on because you just finished another episode of The Urban Pharmacy. For today's show notes, head on over to theurbanpharmacy.com and be sure to join us inside our private Facebook group called The Urban Pharmacy, where we share inspiration, live trainings, and holistic living tips to help you build community and the healthy lifestyle that you've always wanted. If you enjoyed today's episode, make sure you hit that subscribe button and please consider leaving us a 5-star review. Before we connect again on the next show, follow me on Instagram at The Urban Pharmacy. That's urban with an H and pharmacy with an F. And I can't wait to hear your wellness journey as we get to know each other better. There's truly no better time than now to level up your life. And I am so proud of you for showing up today. Until next time, be well, Health Crusader.